without much ado, I will take some questions from the audience. The first question is to Dr. Roy. Somebody said that there is data that through connectivity and CGM, you can reduce the morbidity and mortality. Do you see a sea change that is going to happen in the way the patients are managed and that their morbidity and mortality is reduced in the coming few days? You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, sir. Sorry. Sir, it's a good question, but the thing is that we are quite have the little experience to share the data or to make a comment that ultimately for the morbidity mortality concerned, the telecommunication and this telemonitoring system will definitely have the impact. But in the COVID this endemic time, we have seen some good influences. For the management of diabetes particularly, and as we know that the management of diabetes actually reduces the COVID mortality. So in that case, I think for a short time period, it's definitely have some influence, but for a long-term morbidity mortality concerned, we need more data to make comment on that.
I have one question from the audience to Dr. Ray. Similar line, because of the huge benefit in blood glucose control, Dr. Ray, and the CV risk factor control, do you think that the telemedicine will continue and the accessibility problem of doctors to the rural and far off patients, do you think telehealth will continue even beyond COVID-19?
Yeah, definitely, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, Professor Das.
Dr. Balabhadra asked a question. I think it will continue. Yeah. I think it's going to continue, sure. And it's a good agency. Good. Yes, over to you, Bipin.
The hand holding which the patient is also good during the times of crisis, that they have someone, Dr. Vagish or Dr. Das or Dr. Devadat, to reach out to. So this hand holding can be virtual. So that is the confidence that people have. There are people who have taken teleconsultations saying that I wanted to only see you, doctor. You talk to my daughter afterwards. So I think that's important. Now regarding the issue of CGM, I come to Dr. Vagish again. Do you think, given its relevance, that it is being pushed ahead of its time? We are talking, but when you look at American guidelines and IDF guidelines, the IDF guidelines are generally toward the rest of the world. The American guidelines towards the very developed world. So how much time you think is going to take for people to be in time in range, time above range, I think it's a fantastic dream, but at this moment it's like finding the source of the coronavirus.
Yes, sir. Yeah. It's a good step forward to use CGMS and a monitor. I'm true. It is a little ahead of time when it comes to the developing countries. But WHO looks mainly into a third world countries because a lot of policies are taken based on the recommendation. So if those countries don't take, it will be what we say the reflection of those governments. That's why they are very, very conservative when it comes to the recommendation, WHO. America, I think it's ahead in a technology. They make best use of a technology to deliver the health. So we are somewhere in between. Now technology is so close, it is not difficult. Maybe I don't think that it's a decade. It will be in years where I think this can be implemented in our practice. I feel type 1 patients are going to be real beneficiaries. GDMs, they are going to be real beneficiaries, wherein we can see the result in a short time. For a type 2 diabetes, we have to wait for years or decades to see a benefit. When it comes to the GDM or even a type 1, it's not such a long time to see a benefit. I feel once we start using it, we'll be knowing the real benefit of these tools. I think time will teach us, but it's not far from reality, even in India.
So these are baby steps, maybe a decade or 5 years.
5 years is too long.
Dr. Ved EK has asked a very important question. He says many CGM systems are prone to errors. Taking that into mind, would you advocate any of those non-invasive self-glucose monitoring which is available today, like GlucoWatch or whatever you know about the non-invasive systems, Vagish? Vagish is a brilliant student, brilliant endocrinologist.
Sir was my examiner. Sir, just I need to hold. I think it's a really very valid question. this GlucoWatch non-invasive, their errors will be much higher than the our CGMS. In fact, we need to develop much more into non-invasive era, because we are getting error even with our self-monitoring blood glucose. In fact, in our patients, when I look into the technology, many a times they have eaten something with sugary food with sugary coating, and if they measure the glucometer readings, that will be quite high. I feel we are still far away from non-invasive monitoring, but invasive monitoring properly done, I think, should reflect a good science and a good monitoring and benefit.
Of the economic regions cannot do the full CGM. Can you do FGM, as a flash glucose monitoring, for about every month, 2-3 days, or some such of a Indian adaptation? Can it be done, Vagesh?
Yes, sir. In fact, we are planning a study in St. John's, wherein just we want to do in a GDM patient 7 days or 14 days in every trimester. Look into the profile so that you manage rest of the month or a trimester. We are looking into it. Yes, looking into economic consideration, we may not reflect what is being done in America. At least we should be able to do in an Indian way to deliver a best control.
Bipin, over to you, Bipin.
Yes, Dr. Devadatta, how excited are you about the combined SGLT1 and SGLT2 inhibitions in patients with the DKD, and about Finrenone? How excited are you? Leave alone the cost. It's just the beginning of a new era for decreasing MAKE. Whatever nephrology says, that it is the major adverse kidney events, not the MIS.
Yes. So a lot of encouraging data as far as SGLT1 inhibition is concerned, and what the nephrology community feels is that if you talk of combined SGLT1 and SGLT2 inhibition, probably you are going to see some better results. Of course, that there could be some other side effects, because the SGLT1 receptors are predominantly in the GI tract as compared to the kidney, and we know that only 10% of the proximal tubules will have the SGLT1 receptors. However, the combination of both SGLT1 and SGLT2 inhibition probably will be helpful, and drugs like sotagliflozin probably could be added on as far as diabetic kidney disease is concerned. Now, your comment about Finrenone, what our community feels is like this, that many of these patients, they need an MRA either to control the blood pressure in resistant hypertension or in patients with resistant heart failure. So many of the CKD patients, they have severe heart failure, and MRA is a must. And these patients, the limitation would be hyperkalemia. So therefore, drugs like Finrenone are going to help, probably because of a lesser incidence of hyperkalemia. In fact, there has been a trial with spironolactone and a potassium binding resin given together for a long period of time, because it was thought that the MRA was absolutely necessary. So in that connection, Finrenone will be definitely helpful for people with resistant hypertension, for people with resistant heart failure, and there are some advantages which are seen to reduce fibrosis, especially in the kidney. So maybe we are looking at an era where we are going to combine ARB with SGLT2 inhibitors with an MRA, all put together for protection.
Thank you.
I like
Thank
this.
you very much.
Lot of things cleared. Bipin, fantastic question. Please continue, Bipin.
The other question was that what are your comments on the site of action of SGLT2 inhibitors in type 2 diabetics? Some people say it is not the afferent arteriolar, it is just augmenting the efferent arteriolar action. Do you agree with that, or you think that there is, and of course there is erythropoietin, which you said rightly, reducing the oxidative stress?
So generally, there are two main mechanisms which are there in the kidney. Of course, the glucoseuria thing is there, but there is alteration in tubuloglomerular feedback, and which is often probably sidelined. In the kidney, we have the glomerular effect as well as effect on the tubules. And when the tubules start getting damaged, you have something, an adverse effect also on the glomeruli. And the tubuloglomerular balance is disturbed. Now, what the SGLT2 inhibitors would do is probably try to set right this tubuloglomerular feedback, and in that sense they become nephroprotective, because there are some data to show that because of reduction of inflammation, there is reduction in tubular fibrosis also in the kidney. The structural data is still to come out, but this is only a hypothesis. The second point which you made is about the efferent and the afferent arteriole. The general impression is that there is intraglomerular hypertension, and that leads to progressive renal disease and therefore progressive renal damage because of glomerular sclerosis. But here, in the diabetic kidney, what typically happens is that there is an afferent arteriolar vasodilatation. So there is a big rush of blood inside the glomerulus. This gives rise to the rise in the intraglomerular pressure. The efferent arteriole does not dilate to that extent, and therefore you get progressive glomerular damage. So with the SGLT2 inhibitors, what we are doing is reducing the afferent arteriolar pressure. So basically it causes afferent arteriolar vasoconstriction, reducing the intraglomerular pressure, and that is how there is an effect on the renoprotection. So these are the two main theories as far as renoprotection is concerned.
Few questions. One question to Dr. Ray. I want a single sentence answer. The question is very intelligent. He's asking that some time back, the teleconsultation guidelines said, especially one by the government and RSSDI, that diabetic foot and GDM don't do teleconsultation because it involves two lives and the foot is at risk. But now the guidelines are changing. Now the questioner wants to know that can you use Swati Chauhan? Swati Chauhan wants to know, can you use this telehealth in the diabetic complication management in COVID-19 times? A single, very brief answer because of lack of time. 2-sentence answer, sir. Dr. Ray.
Sir, till today, I don't want to treat any kind of complication of diabetes through telemedicine, because many of the aspects are there, because starting from insulin initiation to, in diabetic foot management, there is a lot of things like, palpation is a very important aspect, particularly, monofilament testing and pulse testing. So these are actually can't be done. And at the same time, the insulin initiation, particularly in a pregnant patient, that actually is a very important role for the diabetes management in GDM. So any kind of complications like starting from diabetic ketoacidosis, kind of sepsis, or kind of, the GDM or, the diabetic foot ulcer should not be treated, I think, till that.
I think good answer. Now, I think one more question I have to ask Dr. Vagesh Iyer. Vagesh, brilliant presentation you made. I just want to know that what's your comment about the keto diet? But I have not much time, Vagesh. I can always tell it in one or two phrases. Keto diet in diabetes.
Good for weight reduction. Long-term benefits not known.
What's your comment about the reason why the fat and protein produce only delayed rise in blood glucose, unlike what you said, carb counting and carb producing immediate rise?
Yeah, I think they get because of the fat and the protein, there will be a delay in delayed emptying of the gastric contents. Fat delays further. In fact, there are evidence to say that even it takes 6 to 8 hours if you have a heavy fatty meal, the glucose to come down. That's mainly with the delayed gastric the emptying and also the metabolism.
Well, I think one important thing you said, that by to some extent one can monitor the doses of the bolus insulin by the carb counting if one takes into account the protein and fat. You said that, and you also said that a low GI index, low glycemic index with high fiber diet will not raise the blood glucose. The questioner wants to know to name some food items available in Bangalore which is low GI and high fiber.
I think if somebody is eating a rice idli, shift to the rava idli. That is rice idli is a high glycemic index food, whereas a rava idli is a low glycemic index. Fine. And if you are eating,
absolutely great. Yes, please continue. I think it's a great answer.
If you are having a dosa made out of a rice, I tell my patient to have a pesarattu and a adai dosa, which is made out of a pulses, where predominantly it is non-starchy carbs and also proteins. Fine. So that is a major.
Yeah, I get your point. In this, in the AD also we discussed something about the type 1 diabetes and the eating disorder. Vagesh, I know that. I mean, would you like to attempt this question? The eating disorders in type 1 diabetes.
Yes, sir. It's especially in adolescence, it's the biggest problem. Binge eating and also rebellion attitude is the one where we find it very difficult to control their glycemia in adolescence. I feel a lot of counseling needs to be done. Sometimes we call even our counselors, even a psychological counselor, to counsel their eating habits. The binge eating and the rebellion eating is a very common, and they even fight. Even the parents fight with the kids, and kids fight with the parents on the food. I have seen some of my type 1 patients having a whole bowl of ice cream in rebellion. Whole bowl, that whatever the bucket they get, they finish off.
Fantastic. I think, Bipin, we have less time. So for your final comment, your message to the masses regarding the carbohydrate counting, fat, protein, the type of eating, and chew count, whatever you want to say in about 2-3 sentences, Vagesh.
In
Yeah.
patients who have got regular eating pattern which is fixed, carbohydrate counting is a zero. It makes no difference. If you are eating the same 3 rotis every day, the same bowl of rice and the same peseret or same jawar roti, it makes no difference. And Indians by and large, and all speakers here, do not eat any variety of diet except when they're offered food in hotels, which with a face-to-face meeting, which are not happening now. So carbohydrate counting is for those people who experiment, and typically it is type 1 and who are insulin deficient. But it
I
is
think
relevant and important that it should be linked with monitoring, because individual variations can occur with what we thought and what actually happened. Telemedicine has actually been there all through. It was there before COVID. It got recognition during COVID, and it will stay during COVID, not at the peak. Just like your peaks of COVID happened, your telemedicine consultations also increase with the lockdown. The lockdown opens, patients want to see you. They don't want to hear you. And they want to just come to you. I don't think telemedicine is a good addition. You cannot do a per rectum examination on telemedicine. So it's all sorts of things are there. And lastly, SGLT inhibitors are there. And previously, Dr. Das used to give us some sessions saying, show me a patient who doesn't not need statin. I want to ask, show me a patient who doesn't require SGLT inhibitor. In the
Brilliant.
range of CKD, heart failure, ASCVD, undisputed role. Weight reduction, which other drug is doing that? And not at the cost that oral semaglutide will do it. Which other drug produces weight? Hypoglycemia. Who wants to have a drug which produces hypoglycemia? Not me, neither for myself nor for my patients. And about the cost, somebody already said, we have already raised. So all the 4 pillars of prescription in ADHD are at the feet of SGLT inhibitors. Show me a patient who does not require SGLT inhibitor. Look at problems, look at issues, give it for glycemic control above HbA1c, above GFR of 45, bring it down to 30 and offer renal protection and cardiac protection. You may not get glycemic benefit, but these drugs are here to stay. And I have heard enough today to say that there is no challenge to that. There is challenge to metformin, there is challenge to sulfonylurea, there is challenge to DPP-4 inhibitors, there is a challenge for remaining users of pioglitazone. There is some challenge. These drugs at this moment are unchallenged. I rest my case here, and then Dr. Das for his final comments, as usual.
I think we are at the end of this symposium. Dear friends, just wait for 2 minutes. I think Bipin has said it all. Wonderful winding up, Bipin. I cannot do anything better than that. I will just say that the Government of India gave guideline in March 2020, and again in this year, last month, the NCDIR in the Vagesh city, in the Bangalore, they have given a guideline for the telehealth use in the non-communicable diseases. It's in the web, and so I think I agree that it may not be very helpful beyond the corona COVID-19. We have to wait and see. But I have a small thing to submit between here, that we suffer from the inaccessible areas for the patients. So let us see whether it will serve any purpose there beyond the COVID-19. But I must tell you that today this is used quite extensively, both for the making the diabetics who don't have access, and competition to the other competitors, and the and digital health, because of the we have a very high teledensity. I forgot the number, very high teledensity. So it is possibly has worked out well in these times. Now, coming to the talk of Dr. Vagesh Iyer, I cannot agree more that than the fact that you said that what we are aiming at, a high fiber, low glycemic index food as a control of diabetes, as providing great benefit. Fat and protein and carbohydrate all have their utility, and fat and protein contribute to a less and delayed glycemic excursion. And you also said the role of CGMS and the FGM in giving the person with diabetes the idea what food acts in which way in him. I think that's a great message you give. And Devadatta, your talk was superb, and you gave beautiful idea about the new things that are coming. You said about that both in the heart failure and DKD, SGLT2 has definitely reduced at least by 25% in the heart failure and 35% DKD. That's what you said. And you said that DAPA-HF also showed that this SGLT2 inhibitor, as Bipin beautifully put, so many person like statin whom we cannot give SGLT2. Now statin has reduced heart attack by 33%. If SGLT2 reduces heart attack under 25%, Bipin, we have made our case. Now you also said that in non-diabetics it's a great use, as in non-diabetic kidney disease also. And great news, it does not dip the blood glucose to very low hypoglycemic level. And Bipin said beautiful, it does not produce hypoglycemia. Bipin have one more thing to add to SGLT2's crown, one more gem in the crown of SGLT2, that is a nutritional offloader. It's a drug which reduces weight, very significant. Am I correct, Vagesh? So the nutritional offload, the weight loss is a great benefit. All of us discussed weight loss today. That also Dr. Devadatta Chapekar said about that. And also showed the beautiful data of the credence and data of the DAPA-CKD and the EMPA kidney data, which conclusively showed is a wonderful drug for reducing the kidney complications, reducing the heart complication, both MACE, HHF, mortality, and is a wonderful drug. Dear friends, time is the science is long, but time is short. And dear friends, it's my great pleasure and honor at this point to first thank Bipin for the wonderful moderation. Bipin, in your unimitable style, you have done a wonderful moderation of the session. And thank to all the speakers.